They're treating us like a cash machine. Shameless, embarrassing grifters.
Wow.
So when people are sitting back asking, what's the motive here? What's the ultimate objective? I feel like we're safe if we just continue to answer $sign.
Harry and Meghan chose the very worst country on the planet to cynically exploit for their own purposes. On a fake royal tour, which is nothing more than a PR stunt and a cash-grabbing exercise, the Sussexes have been blasted by the Australian media, by the Australian public, and by leading Australian politicians. One of the big publications, right? One of the biggest newspapers in Australia is the Sydney Morning Herald, right? It's huge. And they've said the following. They've said Australia was very good to Harry and Meghan first time round, 2018. Now they want to use us as an ATM.
In today's video, we break down day 2 of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle in Australia. Backlash explodes, claims of cashing in getting louder, Harry showing deep emotional strain tied to fatherhood and past trauma, while Meghan's side of the tour gets painted as a high-end, money-driven spotlight. If you missed day 1, it's already up on the channel. If day 1 felt awkward, uncertain, and off balance, day 2 doesn't just continue it, it pushes everything into a more intense and complicated level. Because what we are seeing now is no longer just a royal-style tour or a celebrity stop. It's turning into something far more controversial, divided, and openly criticized in public talk.
I think he was a little bit disappointed that we gave him a kid's footy. He wanted one of the real ones, but he went okay.
The tone shifts hard, and day 2 opens with 2 very different realities unfolding at the same time, almost like parallel worlds colliding. At Mission Whitton Oval in Melbourne, Harry steps into a scene that feels like a lively public festival layered over a sports event. On one side, a family crowd and younger audiences are gathered in bright energy, watching a music performance that fills the space with movement and noise. Just a few meters away, Harry is on the field kicking an Australian rules football, chatting with AFL players, smiling for cameras, all while preparing for something far more serious that's coming next in the day. He then moves into a public Q&A focused on men's mental health, and the energy changes instantly.
You don't have to wait until you're lying on the kitchen floor in the fetal position. If you get choice and resource, if you are able to, and it doesn't have to be professional therapy, it can be talking with your mate.
He starts talking about fatherhood in a very personal way, not polished or rehearsed, but raw and real, describing emotional struggle, identity questions, and inner conflict. He also reflects on the early days of becoming a father, describing emotional confusion and moments where he felt disconnected from his role.
They want to heal, they want to listen, and they want to learn, whilst at the same time trying to pocket hundreds of thousands of dollars to boost their flagging finances.
He speaks about therapy as something essential, not just background detail, but a tool for processing deeper past experiences. And the biggest contrast of the whole day hits right here.
Oh, the cyclists. You enjoying being in Australia?
Yeah, it's wonderful. It's great to be back.
Anything to say to the Australian public?
Thanks for having us.
That deeply emotional conversation is happening in the same environment where earlier a lively family crowd and younger audiences were enjoying a light public event, creating a sharp and unexpected shift in tone.
Not at the club, wife Meghan, her name absent from the day's itinerary, raising questions about where she might be. Later emerging, she's been back on set, filming with MasterChef.
That clash of moods, playful public energy on one side, heavy emotional talk on the other, quickly becomes one of the most talked about parts of the whole visit. It doesn't come off as something carefully staged or planned for effect. Instead, it hits like an accidental moment that feels almost unreal, like 2 worlds crashing into each other in real time.
What I thought was really interesting on this tour is that somebody handed Meghan some flowers or something, and she immediately gave it to some sort of like lady-in-waiting character, as the Queen might do. You know, that's even Princess Anne doesn't do that.
Harry continues speaking, digging into how parenting today has shifted compared to the past, especially when it comes to emotional awareness. He reflects on how growing up, emotional conversations were not something he was really exposed to, pointing to a more closed-off environment during his childhood.
Australians didn't bother to show. As Nancy Sidley said, look at those crowds. And actually, when you see Harry and Meghan emerging from the car in Australia, just take a look to see if anyone other than the media, other than the MSM, bothered to show up.
In the wider royal household linked to King Charles III and the legacy of Princess Diana, where certain topics were just not openly discussed or even acknowledged. As he speaks, the cameras don't stop rolling and the entire scene stays fully exposed to the public eye.
This is nothing that the satirical geniuses at South Park haven't predicted.
We want privacy! We want privacy! All right, thanks for having us on the show. It's so awesome to be here. It's great.
Journalists stay locked in position and the audience reacts in mixed ways. Some people are fully engaged, while others look unsure how to even process the emotional weight being shared in what still feels like a public, almost entertainment-style environment. The tension starts building fast because the contrast is just impossible to ignore.
Now, the couple are trying to convince Australians that their trip is a humanitarian one. That's right, the messaging from the relentless Sussex PR machine, which never sleeps, is that they are going to Australia because they're worried about communities there. Communities thousands of miles away from their luxury Montecito mansion.
This is exactly where day 2 starts to feel unstable in tone. The whole setting refuses to stay in one emotional lane and keeps jumping back and forth without warning. One moment, it's light energy, football, and family-friendly entertainment vibes. The next moment, it shifts straight into therapy talk, emotional struggle, and deep identity reflection. That constant switch becomes a defining part of how Harry is seen throughout the day.
Meghan was pretending to be overwhelmed. She said Sunshine Sachs works harder than the devil and Kris Jenner combined. And certainly, I just want you to watch Meghan's faux body language going into the hospital, given what she had said just before entering.
Later on in the same series of events, Harry joins more structured discussions about fatherhood and relationships, going deeper into the emotional imbalance that can happen between parents after having a child. He explains how one partner may feel overwhelmed by the pressure of responsibilities at home, while the other is dealing with emotional distance, stress, and outside expectations pushing in from every direction.
Today, Meghan Markle is filming an episode of their Master Chef. I don't know what she can teach these people that they couldn't learn on Sesame Street after watching With Love, Meghan.
His tone stays reflective and thoughtful, sometimes almost analytical, but still rooted in personal experience and lived emotion. And outside of that room, the public reaction keeps shifting in a very different direction altogether.
She's quietly announced that she's an investor in an app, like an influencer app, kind of like the Shop My page that she used to have, that she terminated shortly after launching it. And she's utilizing this app, this AI app, to shill the clothing that she's currently wearing on the Australian tour.
While he's speaking about vulnerability, healing, and emotional awareness, criticism around the broader tour is growing louder and more aggressive in online discussions. One phrase keeps popping up again and again in commentary, calling it a faux royal tour, framing it like a performance-driven appearance rather than a traditional official or purely charitable visit.
Now, the Duke and Duchess have been accused of using Australia, and I quote, as an ATM, right? A cash machine on a pretend royal trip that some insist is about making money and self-promotion.
That narrative gets even stronger when people compare it to what's happening on Meghan's side of the tour, where the focus is increasingly seen as being tied to branding, visibility, and lifestyle positioning in a very media-driven space. Her presence is tied to a luxury wellness retreat experience that's now one of the most debated parts of the whole visit. The event is promoted as a full immersive weekend built around connection.
The Royal News Network, though, did sense that Meghan was loving the attention. Having looked at the video she posted, you can feel the glee from Meghan, an adoring crowd that pays what she always wants.
Personal growth and transformation, but the pricing structure instantly becomes a hot topic in public discussion. Entry starts at several $1,000s, with higher tier packages unlocking more exclusivity, including private interaction chances and photo opportunities. That detail, access being split into paid levels, quickly becomes the center of attention.
Let's make this quick. 4 words that Meghan Markle uttered before entering an Australian children's hospital for the grossest royal stunt I have ever seen.
Because now it's not just about wellness anymore. It starts feeling like exclusivity itself is being sold as a product. Meanwhile, Meghan's wider public visibility is also connected to a digital fashion system where every outfit gets broken down piece by piece.
Please welcome to MasterChef Australia, the Duchess of Sussex, Meghan Markle!
Each appearance turns into a curated display of clothing, brands, and pricing details, letting audiences track and shop the looks in real time. Her wardrobe is no longer just style. It becomes part of a commerce-driven structure. And she's not just casually inside this system, she's also tied into how it operates, including involvement on the investment side.
For Meghan, she wanted her moment in the spotlight on her own, too. So immediately after that hospital appearance, let's make this quick, she went and served frittata at a women's refuge. And she asked, is anyone else hungry? While looking and smiling at the press and other people gathered in the center of the room.
So while Harry is focused on emotional healing and inner transformation, Meghan's public-facing world is increasingly shaped around visibility, branding, and monetized influence in the digital space.
This is where Diana crushed, and she thinks she's Diana, so she's back there.
Geez. That contrast becomes one of the biggest tensions of day two, because it builds a perception that's hard for people to ignore.
No wonder there is revulsion around the world for the start of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's fake royal tour down under.
On one side, you've got emotional depth, therapy talk, and personal reflection. On the other side, you've got luxury access systems, branding networks, and financialized visibility shaping every move.
Queen Esther made a very good point. I'm appalled the hospital even allowed this. Someone seriously needs to be held accountable for whoever approved it. And Hans added, why are sick children being made to sit outside in wheelchairs instead of resting in their rooms? It feels gross to watch, like they're being put on display for photos rather than cared for with dignity. This comes across as deeply insensitive and quite upsetting. It is sad to watch.
And even though they're physically in the same country, moving through the same tour, their public narratives start to feel more and more disconnected. Not just different, but fully misaligned. And as day two continues unfolding, that gap doesn't shrink. It gets more visible, more talked about, and more central to how people interpret the entire tour experience. While the broader Australian visit continues, attention later in the day starts shifting more heavily toward Meghan's independent appearances. And that's where the tone of the story takes another sharp turn. Because while Harry is linked to structured charity work and public service appearances, Meghan's presence is increasingly being framed around lifestyle branding, curated visibility, and commercial expansion happening in real time. One of the biggest talking points is still her involvement in a high-end wellness retreat experience in Sydney. The event is promoted as an exclusive girls' weekend-style gathering, built around connection, personal growth, and empowerment. But what instantly fuels public debate is the pricing structure. Standard access starts at around $2,699 per person, with upgraded tiers reportedly adding several $100s more for enhanced experiences, including premium access moments and a personal photo opportunity with Meghan herself.
Hospital where they focus on cancer victims and makes it into a photo op for her.
That detail becomes the main focus of criticism online, because the experience is no longer being described as a general wellness retreat. It is being called by critics a pay-to-access celebrity proximity model, where the main attraction is not the content, but direct connection to Meghan. And that perception spreads faster than any official explanation. At the same time, Meghan's fashion presence during the tour reaches a completely new level of visibility. Through her involvement with an AI-powered fashion platform known as One-Off, each of her outfits from the Australian tour is actively broken down, cataloged, and made shoppable in real time. Every appearance turns into a structured digital entry. Dress, designer, price, direct purchase link. For example, her Melbourne hospital appearance look is instantly processed into a full breakdown, letting users click and buy each individual item she is wearing. This turns her public appearances into something far beyond traditional fashion coverage. It becomes a live commercial pipeline, a walking, moving product catalog, and importantly, Meghan is not just participating in this system, she is also positioned as an investor in it, which means her visibility during the tour is directly tied to the expansion of a commercial platform built to monetize exactly that visibility. That detail becomes one of the most discussed parts of the entire trip, because it reframes every public appearance. It is no longer just what she wore. It becomes what she is selling in real time.
They didn't go first class. Well, I can tell you a couple of things. First of all, they're flat broke and they have to save money. Secondly, there was no first class. How the mighty have fallen. They are having to rough it in ordinary business class, which, let me tell you, Meghan hates because she doesn't like to meet ordinary people.
And the reaction to that shift is immediate. Supporters describe it as modern entrepreneurship, a way for public figures to take control of their image and monetize attention in a structured way. Critics, though, are seeing the whole situation in a very different light. They argue it looks less like normal public engagement and more like the transformation of personal presence into a financial product. And that tension keeps building as Meghan's activities continue alongside the wider tour events. Because while Harry is focused on structured appearances centered on emotional healing, veterans' issues, and fatherhood-related struggles in formal or semi-formal settings, Meghan's presence is increasingly tied to curated lifestyle moments and structured monetization systems happening in real time. At one point in broader media coverage, a royal commentator is quoted describing Meghan's commercial direction as a new way to generate income.
Well, Harry and Meghan are in the country, and here at the Late Debate, we've got exclusive footage of their arrival in this country.
Because we need some privacy. We want privacy. We want privacy. We want privacy.
And I think we can all agree that's all that needs to be said.
Pointing out that her public role is no longer just appearances, but part of business ecosystems built around her identity. That framing becomes a key part of how both the retreat and fashion platform are being interpreted together. And because these aren't being seen as separate actions anymore, they are being grouped into one bigger pattern. A retreat model that monetizes access to Meghan, a fashion platform that turns her outfits into real-time digital commerce, a public tour that boosts visibility for both at the same time. And that combination builds a narrative that follows her throughout the day like a shadow she can't step away from. Meanwhile, criticism around the tour itself keeps growing louder, with public discussions increasingly focused on taxpayer concerns, policing costs, and petitions linked to the visit. Reports of a petition gathering tens of thousands of signatures add more fuel to the debate, with critics arguing that public resources shouldn't be tied to what they view as a privately structured, commercially active tour.
Meghan, Duchess of Sussex, has joined MasterChef Australia as a guest judge. The lifestyle influencer, actress, wife to Prince Harry, and mother of two, filmed her top secret appearance on the hit show in Melbourne today.
That sentiment starts to feed directly into how Meghan's appearances are framed specifically, because the more commercial her activities appear, the more intense the funding debate becomes. And the more intense the funding debate becomes, the more every single appearance gets reinterpreted through that lens. Even basic public moments, walking into venues, greeting attendees, or being photographed, start to carry extra weight. They are no longer seen as simple appearances. They are viewed as parts of a larger attention-to-money ecosystem. And that's where Meghan's side of the tour begins to dominate the narrative space in a major way. Not because of one single event, but because everything keeps stacking together over time. A retreat, a fashion monetization system, a curated wellness branding identity, and a non-stop media cycle pushing every single detail into public view.
Ask them, how would you like me to address you? Now, remember, this is Meghan Markle, a woman who demands that when she's entering a room at an empty friend's apartment, that she is announced as the Duchess of Sussex. And Harry, we know how much he cares about his title, so he shrugged. Apparently, he just shrugged and said, however you like. In other words, you call us by our goddamn titles.
By the end of this part of day 2, Meghan is no longer just another participant moving through the tour. She's now positioned as one of its biggest focal points, both in praise and in criticism. And that shift makes sure the conversation only gets sharper, louder, and way more divided as the tour continues. As the Australian visit involving Prince Harry and Meghan Markle moves into its final stretch, the overall tone hits a much more intense level. Not because of one single moment, but because the entire story is now being read and debated in real time from completely different angles. What started as a 4-day public tour focused on charity work, sport, mental health, and wellness has now turned into something way more controversial in public conversation.
He then arranged for a group of about 70 staff, parents, and young patients to wait in the hospital atrium for the couple. That was that horrible scene that we saw where the children are being treated as props.
A split-screen narrative is forming. Emotional vulnerability on one side and commercial expansion on the other, all constantly compared against history, royal expectations, and legacy figures often mentioned in commentary. And that comparison is where everything starts to blow up, because almost every major moment is now being filtered through one repeating question that just won't go away. Are they continuing traditional public service roles, or are they reshaping it into a modern commercial brand? One of the most repeated reference points in discussion is the legacy of Princess Diana. Her public image, built around humanitarian visits, hospital appearances, and deep emotional connection with everyday people, is constantly brought up when people talk about Harry's appearances during the tour, especially his focus on mental health, veterans, and fatherhood.
Melbourne resident, when asked whether he would go and see Harry and Meghan, replied, "No, and if I do, only to boo."
At several points, Harry speaks openly about emotional struggle, therapy, and parenting challenges. He presents himself as someone trying to break old generational patterns from his upbringing inside the household of King Charles III. He talks about growing up in an environment where emotional conversations were rare, and how becoming a father forced him to confront feelings he had buried for years. And in doing that, he reinforces an image that supporters often see as emotional openness, someone willing to speak about pain instead of hiding it away. But critics are not nearly as unified in that reading, because while Harry's message is rooted in vulnerability and mental health awareness, it is unfolding inside a tour structure that many see as increasingly commercial in how it is presented. And that's where the pressure starts building again. The contrast gets even stronger when Meghan's activities are placed right next to it. One side is framed around emotional healing, therapy conversations, and personal reflection. The other side is framed around branding systems, curated lifestyle visibility, and monetized public engagement happening in real time. And when both narratives run side by side through the same tour, the tension becomes impossible to ignore.
Brawling back to the public consciousness by doing all the things she complained about when she was in the royal family.
Yeah.
It makes no sense.
Throughout the tour, Meghan is tied to a series of high-visibility lifestyle and branding initiatives, including a luxury wellness retreat in Sydney and participation in a fashion platform that turns her wardrobe into a real-time shopping system. The retreat quickly becomes one of the most controversial parts of the entire visit, with entry packages reportedly starting in the thousands and premium tiers offering enhanced access, including personal interaction opportunities. Critics frame it less as a wellness experience and more like a monetized proximity model built around celebrity access. A royal commentator is quoted describing it as a new way to generate income, pointing to a wider shift where public visibility is being turned into structured business ecosystems. That comment spreads fast online because it reframes what public appearance even means. It is no longer just presence, it is product. At the same time, Meghan's involvement with the AI-driven fashion platform One Off adds another layer of controversy. Every outfit she wears during the Australian tour is broken down in real time. Dress, accessories, shoes, each tagged with brands, prices, and direct shopping links.
Why are Harry and Meghan visiting a hospital when they are on a commercial visit to Australia? They're not working royals. They should not be using charity to muddy the waters in the hope that these money-grubbing hustlers will be mistaken for individuals who care about charity.
Her Melbourne hospital appearance look alone is turned into a fully shoppable page within hours. This creates what critics call a walking commerce system, where visibility becomes direct consumer access. And importantly, Meghan is not just featured in this system, she is also positioned as an investor in it, meaning her image is not only monetized externally, but built into a platform designed to scale that monetization. That detail becomes central to Backlash narratives, because it suggests structure, not coincidence. Meanwhile, Harry's side of the tour continues leaning heavily into emotional public speaking. In one widely discussed segment, he reflects on early fatherhood, describing emotional disconnection and the difficulty of adjusting to parenting without strong emotional guidance from his upbringing. He speaks about therapy helping him process internal struggles and prepare for fatherhood in a healthier way. He also talks about how modern parenting has changed and how many men still struggle with identity shifts after becoming parents. These comments are widely shared, praised by some as honest and criticized by others as too personal for a public diplomatic-style tour.
They are greeted by this tiny crowd of 11 people.
Still, they reinforce Harry's position in the narrative, emotionally open, reflective, and focused on healing. And that's where comparisons intensify again, because Harry's tone increasingly resembles what many associate with Diana's public emotional openness, not in exact form, but in spirit. The willingness to speak about inner life in public spaces, the focus on vulnerability, the rejection of rigid formality. But critics argue the key difference now is context. Diana's public work was rooted within royal duty structures, while Harry and Meghan's appearances exist outside official royal frameworks, yet still generate royal-level attention, security debates, and global scrutiny. That contradiction becomes central to Backlash. An opinion piece during the tour describes the Sussexes as engaging in tone-deaf hawking by a couple estranged from reality, capturing the harshest criticism of their approach. Supporters strongly reject that framing, saying the couple are simply building independent careers after stepping away from royal duties. But the intensity of that language shows how divided perception has become. Another layer of tension comes from financial optics. Harry's appearances are linked to structured conferences and mental health events, some ticketed with pricing ranging from hundreds to thousands depending on access level. Meghan's retreat and lifestyle ecosystem follows a similar tiered access model, but in wellness and branding spaces instead of formal conferences. And while both operate independently, the parallel pricing structures become a major focus of criticism, because they reinforce a perception that emotional advocacy and lifestyle branding are both operating inside monetized visibility systems, just in different formats. As the tour reaches its final Sydney appearances, the narrative tension peaks. Harry is still framed as doing real royal-type work, including veterans events, mental health advocacy, and ceremonies like wreath-laying at the Australian War Memorial. Meanwhile, Meghan's final appearances are tied to luxury events, curated experiences, and lifestyle branding engagements beyond traditional diplomatic frameworks. By this point, the conversation is no longer just about actions, it is about meaning. One side framed around healing, trauma, and emotional transparency. The other framed around branding, monetization, and curated access. And as both narratives run side by side, they become harder to merge into one story. By the end of the visit, the most dominant theme is fragmentation. Harry and Meghan are physically on the same tour, but publicly, they are increasingly seen as two separate identities. One tied to legacy, emotion, and reflection, the other tied to modern influence systems and commercial expansion. And that gap, whether fair or exaggerated, is what turns a 4-day visit into a global debate that extends far beyond Australia. Got something to say about this? Drop your thoughts in the comments and let's get into it. If this breakdown made you see things differently, hit subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. Tap that like button and share this with someone who needs to hear it.